Good morning. Welcome to the Candidates Town Hall. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. My name is Roger Sweat, and I'm here to more or less guide us through today's program. This is another exciting moment in SaddleBrooke's evolution as we prepare for this election and the final aspects of the transition process. We will have a board comprised completely of HOA 2 residents, and that will be a first for us. Due to the tireless efforts of many, this process would not have been possible. Most notably, our current board members and the negotiating team have worked tirelessly. This town hall is designed for you to meet the 7 candidates in the selection. It was announced that there were 8, however, I would like to announce that Donnie Ramsey has withdrawn. The 7 candidates are Diane Ashby, Therese Butler, Peter Campbell, Mike Collins, Bob Kalinda, Jerry Shafer, and Bill Webster. As a former board member, I know how much time and energy is involved serving on the board. Each of these candidates is to be commended for his or her willingness to volunteer to devote much of their time and expertise to our wonderful community. Please give a hearty round of applause to show our appreciation for these candidates. The 3 candidates receiving the highest number of votes will have 2-year terms, and the candidate with the next highest number of votes will have a 1-year term. That means that in 2019, there will be 2 board positions open, and in 2020, there will be 3 positions open. For today's presentations, each candidate will have 5 minutes to make his or her presentation. Larry Zanata, seated here in the front, will be the timekeeper as he has done so well in the past. And by the way, Larry is chair of the Unit Rep Committee, and Larry is also vice chair of the Rules and Regulations Committee. And here is Larry for us. After all the candidates have spoken, there will be a question and answer session where questions may be directed to specific candidates or to all the candidates. The candidates have drawn lots to determine the order in which they will speak, which is not the alphabetical order in which they are currently seated. I know it will be difficult, but please hold your applause until all candidates have given their presentations. I know your enthusiasm is enormous, but try. Our first candidate, Therese Butler.
Thank you, Roger. I had to get my own watch going. I want to make sure that I don't go over my allotted time. As Roger said, my name is Therese Butler, and I want to thank you all for attending today's town hall. I think it's important for the community to be able to understand who the people are that they will be putting in charge of the community for them. I'm currently the senior vice president on the board, and my term ends at the end of December. As Roger mentioned, this is a very important period for us as we move to transition, and it impacts our community in 2 ways. First of all, as Roger mentioned, it'll be an all-resident board, and I want to cover that a little more later. Secondly, it also means that transitioning from the developer, we will no longer be paying 4% of all of our revenues in order for them to provide managed services. Services such as accounting, HR, and legal. To prepare our association to handle all of these areas, The existing board, including myself, has been involved in the selection and implementation of new club management software, of an automated time and attendance system, and we're currently in the process of a payroll processing and HR system. These new systems are a major foundation for our association and are critical to our economic vitality, as it allows us as a community to respond much more quickly to issues that may arise that may require us, particularly from a financial perspective, to change gears in a much more timely fashion than we have in the past. In addition to these new systems that we've been implementing, we have also selected a brokerage firm that is currently procuring HR benefits for our employees, and they will administer that program. We are also in the selection of a third party to manage our 401k program for our employees. These are also critical elements for transition, because in order for us to hire and retain good qualified staff, we need to make sure that we are competitive in the marketplace. In addition to those processes going on, as well as reserve studies, road studies, engineering studies, I've worked with the other transition committee members to negotiate the terms and conditions of the sale of the golf courses, and also the terms and conditions of our transition agreement. What all this means is that we're now at the point in time where, going to a fully managed resident board, we are truly in control of our destiny. As a full-time resident board, it needs to be focused on strategic direction and the goal to keep our community one of the most sought-after communities in which to retire. My goals to move forward for this next term are, first, to provide our management team with the support and accountability to manage this community on a day-to-day basis and to stay out of their way. Secondly, I'd like to provide a strong foundation to new board members on their responsibilities and to focus on our strategic and fiscal responsibilities. I would do that by immediately in January holding a third party to come in and let the board hear and understand what their responsibilities are from a fiduciary perspective, as well as responsibilities for maintaining this community, and also what their responsibilities are not. And I'd like to be there to provide the institutional knowledge so as we make new policies or change existing ones, that there's an understanding of why things were as they were at the time, but why it's time for change. I'd also like to review and update existing board policies, update the roles and the structure of our committees, oversee an analysis of our governing documents, and propose changes where appropriate. If you agree with these goals, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Peter Campbell.
Good morning. As I started thinking about this, I found myself channeling that great actor Peter Finch in the movie Network, and where he says, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." And then I thought about it and I said, well, that's not right. The saying is, don't get mad, get even. So with that in mind, I decided to offer my background, serve on your board, and work out my concerns there. Some of them. I believe we really must improve our selection and planning of projects to fully consider and meet homeowner needs, and to provide the best value for our expenditures to ensure the longevity of these investments when we make them. In my 40 years, you can tell I have a little accent, but I've worked in the US for 40 years in various environments: university, management and technology consultancies, and manufacturing business. This has given me a wide range of extensive experience in analyzing and solving complex problems. And that experience I've had has been exclusively in privately held businesses. So I've always been very close to the source of the funding that I've been using And that's led me to try to spend that money, if it's not in my own, responsibly and efficiently. We must also support our amenities with excellent service, and I believe this starts at the top. I am concerned we simply cannot continue this revolving door of department management that we've had for quite a few years now, and I feel that this must indicate some kind of structural problem in our processes for the selection, retention, and career development of our staff. I think this needs critical review by the new board. Throughout my career, I've hired, managed, and retained many highly qualified technical and marketing individuals. In my last job before retiring, I was Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of a company called Magnequench. It used to be a General Motors division that was taken into private ownership. And I was asked to set up a new technology and customer center, which I did. I selected the location in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, built the 30,000 square foot facility, equipped it, staffed it, and 5 years later, shut the whole thing down and moved it offshore to Singapore, together with some of the senior staff, actually just to get closer to our principal customers in Japan and China. In doing so, I added under my responsibilities our global sales and marketing. Now, in the next year or so, we've got some key new challenges with our golf course acquisition. We need to provide excellent support for our new director of golf in marketing our golf memberships and in improving member services. And we need to support our new superintendent in keeping high course standards and longevity for our major capital items. We've got some big numbers out there in the future in our budget. I think we need some golf course savvy people on our new board. I have served here on the Greens Committee from 2013 to 16. My particular responsibility was monitoring and reporting golf course standards. I also have prior HOA board experience. Before moving here in North Myrtle Beach, I was on the board of the Barefoot Resort Residents Association. I have many duties there. You might have heard, if you heard me speak before, of my work in transition from the developer. But in 2009, my responsibility was to supervise the revitalization of 200 acres of our common area land that had been torched by a wildfire. That wildfire burned through our community, totally destroying 76 homes. So you know how serious that was. We need to be realistic in what we plan to do. I do have a couple of examples of some major projects that would illustrate what I mean by realistic, which I will get into at a later time if anybody's interested. So, in summary, my objectives in running for the board: I want to make sure that SaddleBrooke maintains modern and relevant amenities and facilities. I want to make sure we achieve excellence in all of these services that they provide, and it keeps HOA2 as a top-rated active adult community, with the goal of enhancing all our property values. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Diane Ashby.
Good morning. My husband, Jack Lockman, and I love SaddleBrooke. We've owned our SaddleBrooke home for 13 years. We've lived here full-time for more than 7 years. We moved here immediately upon my retirement from Illinois State University. Serving SaddleBrooke as a member of the HOA2 board will build on my education and on my career. I served as Vice President for Advancement, Executive Director of the Illinois State University Foundation, Vice President for Finance and Planning, and Dean of one of the largest colleges of education in the nation. I have successfully negotiated, reorganized, hired, fired, budgeted, planned facilities, and testified in state and national arenas. I have a successful professional track record of leading and redesigning complex organizations. I have applied that knowledge and skills to improve our SaddleBrooke community. I began with SEEK, that's the SaddleBrooke External Information and Affairs Commission, where I learned about government and taxing bodies and developers whose actions impact our life in SaddleBrooke. Since then, I have worked on transition planning, strategic planning, and participated in the Leadership Development Council, which works closely with the HOA2 board. A year ago, I was elected by our community to the HOA2 Transition Negotiation Committee. And along with 3 others before you today, I worked on behalf of all of us to analyze, negotiate, and finalize the purchase of our golf courses and to negotiate the conditions and contract language of our transition from Robeson to resident governance. I care deeply about seeing our transition through and about ensuring that transition is fully implemented and benefits our entire community. Along with all the human resources, accounting, grounds, and facilities challenges that are part of the transition, we have the added complications of golf and pickleball. Now, full disclosure, I play golf, I play pickleball, but I'm also a believer in data. After examining benchmarking communities during formation of our strategic plan, I understand that these are not just niceties. Pickleball and golf are among the essential elements of booming active adult communities. I sincerely believe that this is the time to elect representatives to our board who have a deep knowledge and a deep experience related to these and all other aspects of transition. This is a critical moment in the SaddleBrooke community. Optimizing our lifestyle, ensuring a customer-focused organization, an active community, and financial stability are among the elements of our strategic plan. It is up to our board to make that plan live and to adapt the plan to changing conditions. Sound fiscal planning is certainly a primary strategy. We also need to commit to marketing SaddleBrooke in a highly competitive over 55 planned community market. This requires acknowledging that our #1 competition is 4 miles up the road, being built by our builder who has deep marketing pockets. Our home values rely on beautiful grounds and vistas, modern amenities, and athletic venues, well-maintained homes, and services that are focused on our community members' needs and desires. Very important to our success in resale marketing is figuring out how to collaborate on critical issues with HOA1. Now, this has been challenging for many reasons, including memories of unfortunate history, shared mythologies, and suspicion of HOA2 as a Robeson-led community. We are about to change our status to being a resident-led community, and I will work hard to change our relationship with HOA1 for the good of all of us. I am prepared, I am experienced, I'm social, I'm committed, and I'm energetic. I am dedicated to a positive transition to seeing it through. I will not have a transition learning curve. I will continue to work hard for our community as your HOA2 board member. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Jerry Shafer.
Thank you, Roger. Good morning, SaddleBrooke, fellow candidates. My name is Jerry Shafer, and I want to serve as a member of the Post-Transition Board. My wife, Lori, and I have moved to SaddleBrooke in 2005 after I had numerous careers. I drove nuclear submarines around the ocean for around 20-some years, and I finally retired, and being gone 6 months a year is probably why Lori and I have been married 42 years. After leaving the military, I went to work for Lockheed Missile and Space Company, and I had the distinct pleasure of being stationed out at Kwajalein, a little 2 by 2.5 mile island in the middle of the Pacific, where I was the early days of the missile defense programs under President Reagan. After 6 years there, I opted for early retirement from Lockheed, and then I had the fortunate opportunity to work for Davison Technology as a senior vice president. My job there was to develop government contracts. I had to go all the major aerospace companies, take a look at the government requirements, work out all the plans, budgets, personnel transfers, and all that, before they could get the contracts with the government. Doing this for a Raytheon, Lori and I discovered SaddleBrooke one day. We were just driving around, and Lori convinced me soon afterwards that I needed to retire and learn how to cook, clean, and do housework. Lori truly enjoys SaddleBrooke. She has opted to become more of a pickleball player than a golfer now. She plays pickleball 3 or 4 days a week, but still plays bridge and golf. I play golf regularly, and racquetball was my past history. Unfortunately, I had a jet ski accident and can't play very well at pickleball. So she's trying to get me into that. As I mentioned, Lori and I moved to SaddleBrooke in 2005. I've been on the ALC committee, Architect and Landscape Committee, for over 10 years. I'm currently one of the vice chairs. I understand the frustrations that our people have with our rules and regulations, especially when it feels like they're directly aimed at you. The ALC is a great group. They always show homeowners now the alternative way to get their landscaping needs done, and we really are doing a great job, I think, for the community on that. I love the volunteer committees we have in this area. I'm excited about SaddleBrooke's future. Buying the golf courses, taking over the whole community as a resident, I think we're going to have a great time. I feel that it's my responsibility to do something to help make SaddleBrooke a nicer place for all of us. I do not have a hidden agenda. I desire to use my time and energy to make all of us enjoy living the lifestyle we picked up here in SaddleBrooke. I will communicate with all of you as owners and strive to do my duties as transparently as possible. I want you to know that I'm going to be open and honest in all my dealings, and I believe that is how you build great neighborhoods and friendships. And those are values I carry on in my everyday life. The direction we're headed is very positive. I will consider all your interests and voices on the issues we're going to face after transition. The golf courses, food and beverage, subsidies, and the many amenities that we have available are issues that concern all of us. We have tough decisions to make, and I will insist the board understands interaction with the community is vital to the success of this community. I will commit myself to working for the best common ground for all of us. I will adhere to that principle when the board is making community decisions. We have a wealth of knowledge and experience in SaddleBrooke. Many of our people are now in committees. They're volunteers. They work to make our lives smoother and more comfortable. I will insist we work together to erase negativism and promote our good things. I want to promote HOA2 amenities. I understand people want good value for their dollar. We must do better to obtain success in our restaurants and our golf courses. We need community support to do that, and I believe the board needs to provide the direction to do it. We need to provide the community with amenities that they're enthusiastic about and support. I know there's a lot of concerns over the golf course acquisitions. I believe the Golf Task Force did an excellent due diligence. We had a great background to vote on. I think we did the right choice voting for the golf courses. Okay, in closing, once again, my name is Jerry Shafer, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Bob Kalinda.
Good morning, and thank you for attending today's town hall. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bob Kalinda, and my wife Gail and I have been residents of SaddleBrooke since 2006. During this particular board election, it's going to result in a 5-person resident board. I want that to kind of sink in, because this is the first time that's ever going to happen. And as a result, I feel it's very imperative that you carefully consider the service each candidate for the board has provided this community since they've been here. Let me tell you or delineate the things that I've been involved with here in SaddleBrooke. Last December, I was elected to the Transition Negotiating Committee and have worked tirelessly with the other members of the committee to deal with the documents and the terms and the conditions of transition, as well as the purchase of the both golf courses. In conjunction with that, I also work closely with the Golf Task Force in preparing all of those documents and the presentation that was done for the town halls, as well as doing all of the due diligence that was required. In 2016, I was selected as a member of the HOA Leadership Development Council, and as such, work closely with the board to discuss all issues that are affecting SaddleBrooke. In 2015, I was selected as a member of the Strategic Planning Task Force that was charged with developing the very first strategic plan here in SaddleBrooke. In 2013, I was involved as one of the facilitators for the space utilization focus groups. The information that we garnered from those groups is now being used to repurpose space here in SaddleBrooke, both exercise areas as well as meeting spaces. And in 2011, I was elected to the STPO Board of Directors and have served on that board for almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years in December. The last 5 as its president. And finally, I regularly attend both the Finance Committee meetings and the Facility Committee meetings to stay abreast of those issues because they truly impact our health and well-being here. As a result of my extensive involvement in SaddleBrooke, I have garnered a wealth of institutional knowledge about the community and about its governance. I believe that that is an essential quality for a board candidate and a board member. My involvement in the community has also allowed me to demonstrate my leadership skills. In my former life, I was a career educator at both the high school and college levels, and for the last 15 years of my career, I was the district science supervisor K-12. That career taught me to multitask. It also taught me to build consensus. It taught me organizational skills, and it taught me problem-solving skills, and finally, to engage in active listening, not just listening. These skills are all applicable to a board member. We live in a vibrant and much sought-after community. However, like all communities, we have our challenges. To meet those challenges, let me delineate my goals and my objectives. Number one, being fiscally responsible to the residents and trying to reduce subsidies in certain cost centers by perhaps changing the organization or perhaps by better management. Number two, I will conduct board business strategically and as a visionary. I will not micromanage. The day-to-day activities that occur in this community is the work of the general manager and the department chairs. And of course, they will be held accountable. We need to ensure, I need to ensure as a board member, that the golf courses are managed and operated successfully. As you well know, this is a brand new venture, and we have to get this right. We need to enhance customer-friendly culture here in SaddleBrooke through more extensive training of employees. We need to use the strategic plan to guide our future decisions and to modify that plan as is needed. We need to continue to investigate the acquisition of land that abuts SaddleBrooke to meet our growing needs. I know that there's a group that has started to do that. We need to expand that work. And finally, we need to try to continue to improve communication among the board, among the management, and among the residents. Thank you for your time, and I hope that as a result of my past and my current community service and my demonstrated leadership qualities, I have won your vote.
Our next candidate, Mike Collins.
Good morning. My name is Mike Collins, and I'm asking for you to vote for me as a member of our first all-homeowner elected board. A year ago at this time, I came to you and asked you to elect me as a member of the Transition Negotiating Committee. You did, and for that I thank you. Since the establishment of the committee, we negotiated, and you overwhelmingly approved the purchase of the golf courses. Shortly, you will have the opportunity to vote on the transition agreement. We negotiated to determine whether or not we transition from RCI control to controlling our own destiny. In addition to my participation in negotiations this year, for the past 6 years, I've been very active within the association. I've been a member of the Finance Committee for the last 6 years. I was the chairman for 3 of those years. I was the vice chair of the 3rd Transition Committee and chairman of the Transition Finance Subcommittee. I've been a member of the Leadership Development Council and participated with the Strategic Plan Task Force. I have an MBA, and as reflected in my resume, over 30 years of experience in finance and management. If you want someone on the board with a strong financial background, and more specifically knowledge of the association's finances, that would be me. I've attended virtually all the board meetings and board coffees since I've been here. I've heard your concerns and frustrations. I have a very good sense of your expectations. Transition is an event we've been discussing for years. I mentioned I was on the third transition committee. There were two who preceded that. In the near term, you'll be afforded the opportunity to vote on it. One of the main reasons for transition is to replace the Developer Control Board with a board comprised entirely of residents. There will be challenges the new board will face. It's important for the near term to have knowledgeable board members who don't have a learning curve and need to spend a significant amount of time understanding the history of how and why we got to where we are today. It's also important to recognize that upon transition, we'll have a board that in itself will be going through a change going forward. Our boards in the past have been tactical in nature, out of necessity, with board members supplementing the staff by helping them complete their tasks. Ideally, your newly elected board will set policy with clearly defined expectations and provide the resources for the professional staff to complete their tasks on their own with full accountability for the results. Hopefully the board should achieve this transition in the first year. I want to serve on your board to help guide the community into transition and establish a firm base for future growth. My primary objective is to preserve and improve home values by maintaining HOA2 as a premier adult activity, as was recently recognized by the local newspaper. I plan on being an active member of the board and will balance what's best for the community as a whole while achieving our prudent financial objectives. My goals are provide direction and support to staff to ensure wise management of our assets, financial and infrastructure. This includes setting goals and expectations. Promote transparency and develop a high level of communication and responsiveness between board and homeowners committees and our many, many clubs. I want to ensure the financial strength of our community and thereby increase homeowner value with only modest dues increases. I want to strive for a consolidation of redundant functions between HOA 1 and HOA 2. There are plenty of opportunities for that. In summary, I'm here to serve you and appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Bill Webster.
Imagine a youngster growing up isolated in a blue-collar family. No relatives nearby. Dad worked nights, slept days. Mom struggled with depression. He had a keen mind for math, science, English, and history, but he lacked common sense. His surviving in the professional world was going to be near impossible. I was that young man. For my wedding, which I had never attended a wedding, I memorized all the parts. But no one told me I needed to say, I do. Oops. A social fraternity taught me plaids and stripes don't mix. The military explained the gig line. Church leadership development programs brought me out of my shell. Sitting in as a volunteer at church AA meetings helped me understand how individuals react to situations called triggers. In SaddleBrooke, Leadership Development Council was great preparation. And to Bill Einecker sitting down here, Bill, many thanks for being patient with all my questions. As a highly motivated college professor at a teaching institute, I have a proven track record of providing an outstanding educational opportunity for students. They could approach me anytime they saw me on campus, whether in my office or at lunch. Over the years, I counsel students on various situations. I advised our local fraternity after living with them for 6 weeks. They made me do cleaning and dishes. I was their live-in professor. When the Institute radically changed the whole academic program for each and every student, I developed a personalized contract with the school for each of the 1,500 students. I cared about the students. I care about you. I looked out for the students. That's what I expect to do for you. I was the first vice moderator and the second moderator of the Faculty Senate. Changing the faculty promotion policy from one of mostly politics to one of merit was a great accomplishment. I believe that a person must and should serve their personal faith. I have been an elder, deacon, treasurer, teacher, facilities manager. Each of these experiences has helped me grow. Today, I am a responsible, creative leader who gets the job done. I truly represent the people who elect me. Recently, as chair of the Church Pulpit Committee, I surveyed the congregation on what they wanted in a minister. This kept my personal bias out of the selection process. We now have the best minister for our church. And it's not the person I thought we would vote for. SaddleBrooke. Our next challenge is the golf course. As many of you are worried about, this definitely could be a money pit. My experience with golf courses says that maintenance is everything. A good course and superintendent is the key. The best course superintendents examine the courses up to 3 times a day, keep the workers working, and have a knowledge of agronomy. Essentially a golf course is a farm whose crop is grass. We all know that grass doesn't like a lot of wear and tear. It likes to be fed correctly and requires a good soil base. In this analogy, I guess the golfers, of which I am one, are like locusts. We make divots, ball marks, and run our golf courses across the grass, sometimes in circles. I am constantly reminded by others that our restaurant still has problems. My recent experiences indicate this is truly the case. I am amazed at the schemes people have developed to successfully navigate the restaurant. Where to sit, where to go. One person told me about a scheme they had, they went in shifts. I do see ways to improve the restaurant experience. I'm concerned about security for SaddleBrooke. I do support pickleball and all our amenities. I would like to see an indoor sports facility. I support establishing a great relationship with SaddleBrooke One. In summary, folks, if you want someone who communicates not only by answering questions, but also by asking people questions and listening, to me, SaddleBrooke is a great asset and a great resource. You may want to consider me representing you on the board. And just as a last comment, I have more personal contact with the golf course than many. I've been sprayed on with chemicals. I've had a green right hand from touching a rake. And thank you.
I hear a bell. We will now entertain questions for the candidates. Questions may be directed to a specific candidate or to all 7 candidates. The candidates will have a maximum of 2 minutes to respond to each question. We have microphones at each side of the stage, so that please use those so that everyone can hear your question. Yes, ma'am. Oh, it's CJ. Go ahead.
I have a question for Jerry Shafer and any other candidate that would like to respond. What are the 3 most important issues facing the new board? What actions can you take and will you take to specifically address these issues?
So I think the 3 major things that we got to look at, most of the residents, at least in my opinion, are worried more about dues, home values, amenities, the subsidies on the restaurants, and now, of course, with the golf course acquisition, they're worried about, as some of the candidates mentioned, maybe a money pit. I believe the dues, it's kind of, to me, the dues are kind of like, when I was growing up, I remember McDonald's. I mean, 15-cent hamburger. Well, you're not going to get it anymore. That's the way it is. Prices have gone up, workers make more money. We all want a better quality of life. So that's something that we got to live with. Amenities that we have in service in the restaurants, that's training. I think we have good management. I think Damon is doing an excellent job with the food and beverage. He's got them looking at different directions to go, and I believe leadership is where it starts. Obviously, being an ex-military guy, leadership's the ones that's responsible. We got to hire the right people. We got to hire the experienced people. We got to show them how to do their job and then get out of their way and let them do it. If they don't do it, hold them accountable. And the revolving door policy, unfortunately, if they don't do the job, that means we didn't do our job vetting them to make sure they could do the job. As far as the overall community, I think with the volunteers and the experience we have in the community, I think we have a lot of experience. A lot of people have unbelievable backgrounds. We need to tap into this, but we got to build up community enthusiasm for our facilities. You can't be negative all the time. We have to be positive. It's like everything else. You see sales pitches. If you promote your community, will do well.
I believe that the golf course is one of the major issues. We had a company come in and look at the golf courses, and that was Borders, and they had some tremendous recommendations. We now have a marketing director who hopefully can market the courses so that we can increase the annual memberships and the play itself. Second issue is fiducial responsibility. I believe that, I know that Borders also conducted a study of our restaurants, and they came up with a list of recommendations. I don't know how many of those recommendations have been implemented to try to reduce subsidy, but that's certainly one of the things that I would be looking out for and looking very carefully towards. The third issue, I believe, isn't related to money at all, but it's related to perception. And that's being as transparent as we can possibly be as a board, so that you don't think that we're doing something untold or unknown by you. You need to have faith in the board that this board is going to be successful. And the only way that you can have faith in the board is for us to be as transparent as is humanly possible.
I really don't have much to add. I'd say amen to everything you guys said.
Yeah, I think I covered this question in my presentation, but clearly just the one thing to highlight to do is to drill down on why we've had this revolving door of senior management for so many years. It has to be something that we can fix with a little bit of board leadership.
I believe there are several areas that are very important as we move to transition. Once again, as I stated earlier, we will now have our staff responsible for all of the duties that were provided, albeit poorly, from RCI. This is a tremendous undertaking, so this board needs to be responsive to our management team and make sure that they have the tools they need to run properly. Another area that I think people need to understand is we call ourselves an association or a community, but this is a small city. It truly is. And so the functions needed for us to operate properly need to be in place. I think we're really headed that way, and I think we have a good management team, but once again, it will be to support them. Third, there are so many areas that are important, but truly, I really believe we need to take the time to look at the policies that have been put in place for the last 10 years as a board, determine if they make sense today or don't make sense, and then move forward strategically to get us to where we want to be. Thank you.
Hi, I believe you have all of our resumes. So you have our goals on there. If I have to pick three, I'm going with service. I'm picking that broadly. We're not talking about just restaurants. I'm talking about the entire association, including communication with and responsiveness to the residents. Second, our home values. That involves marketing, that involves the quality of our amenities, which then leads us to third, the integrity of our transition and our strategic plan. I'm dedicated to that. I'm going to see them through.
I want to add a couple things. First of all, in my experience working with the board and the Leadership Development Council, I've been very impressed with them, and you should be very thankful for the board members over the years, because you just have to look at our bank account and see that we were able to buy those golf courses without much effort. The problem that the board has is that there's a few people in SaddleBrooke that likes to cause a lot of trouble. And that causes the board to not want to communicate to you. And it's just the way human beings are. Now, let me explain to you what that is. The board takes in, or the association takes in, a lot of money. If you look around your house, look how much money you've wasted, something you bought, you didn't use, and so forth. So when you look at people complaining about some waste, all right, they may be correct, but we all do that. And so you need a board that's responsible, but they're not 100% perfect. And I think everything that you've been told today by these people is right on, and you'll have a good board no matter who you choose. One other thing I want to say is the boarders report, there are 3 reports out there on the golf course. If that's bothering you, go out and read that. And you will find that it costs about $1 million a year per golf course for maintenance alone. All right. You will find that they're not very complimentary about the current management of that golf course. So what has to happen is your board needs to change quite a few things, and that's what we need to be looking for, and that's why I say course maintenance is number 1. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ken Padgham. I'm from Unit 23. My question is with regards to exactly what you're mentioning, and that is the cost of operating the golf courses. And I would like a response from all members, starting with you, Bill, down at the end. My question is, if elected, would you be in favor of allowing the homeowners the right to vote on how the cost of running these courses is going to be paid for? Please.
Okay, let me give you my position on the golf course. I believe the golf course should be revenue neutral, meaning that the golfers pay for it. I believe we should put all our money into maintenance, especially at the start. I believe that the golf course is not a business, it's an amenity. I think that the paradigm that we need outside play is not correct. I think we need a paradigm shift. Now, when you come to talk about voting, all right, on these various items, I like surveys. So I like to send out surveys to see what you are thinking. And I did that in my classes. I would always, about 3 weeks, I would ask the students to answer 2 questions. One question was, what change do I need to make this class improvement for you? And number 2 was, what change should I not make? And I would get at least 75% agreement on those, and I would make those changes. So to answer your question, I think surveys are best. Voting is expensive and complicated. So I think you need to maybe rethink that issue, and I'm sure Bill Einiger and Therese Butler can tell you more information about the expenses. Thank you.
Well, since the homeowners are going to own the golf courses, definitely should be able to direct how it's going to run. I think Damon will definitely have to survey the homeowners, how we work it. Do I know if we're going to need outside play to support it? Probably. I think homeowners should get the priority. I think we need to look at the fact that it is an amenity. It's going to be a costly amenity, but the homeowners own it, so we should definitely have preference on how it's run.
Currently, we have a Greens Committee. That Greens Committee is going to be reorganized, and I believe anything that we do as a board in terms of the golf courses, we should certainly get their feedback first. We are going to have a lot of, I think, difficulty initially. We're going to have to rely on whomever we, that person working directly with Damon, who Damon also has that type of experience. He's got that certification. They could be sounding boards. As far as taking it to a community vote, I would not do that initially. The community may not have all the information they need to make an informed decision. So I think first we rely on the golf superintendent, we rely on Damon, because they will have a vast amount of experience that we certainly do not have. And we rely upon the newly established Greens Committee.
The acquisition of the golf courses is so important to this community, not just for the play, but also for the appearances of the community and for its desirability to live in. I think that the idea that we would have votes on the money spent, we have a budgeting process that we go through every year, and there's a lot of information provided to the community which will allow for feedback. To put this out for a vote would be, I think, very, very hard. And the votes you're going to make is the vote for the people for the board who are going to represent you in making these decisions.
Well, I agree with Bill that the golf course, it should be treated as an amenity in the way other things are treated as amenities, the restaurants and things in here. And we should try to make it revenue neutral. One of the things I know from prior experience in communities like this is it takes, if you do let's say a household annual membership, it takes about 420, 430 such memberships to support a single golf course. So if you look at what we're taking on, if you're going to do it that way, you'd need about 850 household memberships. Clearly, that's not where we are now, or we wouldn't be taking in outside play. That's why I think that, we have to, I mentioned we have to support our new director of golf and try to figure out a way to be a little bit more creative in our memberships and not have to be chucking out cheap golf now use of the course. If our residents keep doing that, then that's not the way that they should really be investing in our community.
Thank you. And I would say that if we were going to put it to a vote on the funds and how they be expended on the golf course to the entire community, I, like Mike, say when you elect a board and the board members, you have put in their hands a fiduciary responsibility by them to manage the association. Golf is going to be a very important amenity, and it's going to take us several years to write the course. And like our other amenities, there are ways, via committees, upon which to get the input needed. In addition, through the budgeting process, we also hold budget town halls, and every line item in that budget can be reviewed by you as a member, as well as the monitoring of that information is available for you also as the year progresses. So once again, I think that as we move forward with golf courses, the purchase and the running of them, part of the due diligence effort with the Golf Task Force and the Transition Committee was to bring in an outside consultant to help us develop the framework for a marketing plan, as well as to provide us with the information we need, as well as Damon already has as a certified golf superintendent to move us forward.
I have to agree with the rest of the people up here. A line by line item vote by the community makes no sense. We don't do that on any of the budget. Now that said, there is a budgeting process in place, and the golf course will be part of that. Second, I would say, we've already voted about the golf course. Citizens have voted to a one-time small assessment for the golf course and to a small additional a bit of revenue assessed with the dues for the next 5 years for the purpose of the golf courses. So we have voted. The budget process will continue, and if you take a look at the documents that are out there for the vote, you'll see that there is a plan to bring it to a revenue neutral state in about 5 years. But we acknowledge it will take that long because there's reorganization, and there is certainly a lot of investment that has to be made in the equipment and in the condition of the grounds themselves.
We have a question from the other side.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Little levity here. I'd like to know how many of you own a dog? Show of hands. Now I'd like to know how many of you belong to the SaddleBrooke Dog Park? Okay, I'm Kathleen Dunbar. I'm Unit 47, forgot to do that. I'm also president of the SaddleBrooke Dog Park. How many of you feel that the SaddleBrooke Dog Park is an important... Wow. Okay, I just would like to just kind of harp a little bit, because how many of you know anything about the agreement between the SaddleBrooke Dog Park and SaddleBrooke and what our responsibilities are as compared to... How many of you have visited the SaddleBrooke Dog Park? Weeds. We're talking about making our community beautiful. We do a great job. And our budget for the dog park is about $15,000 a year just for our maintenance. But yet I can't even get HOA 2 to come and mow the weeds outside the dog park. It's frustrating. The first time a rattlesnake comes in and bites a dog or a person, we're going to be in trouble. So my frustration is we can't seem to get the ears of HOA 2. I know that if somebody's personal weeds aren't taken care of in their own yard, they're quick to get a citation, but we can't even take care of the grounds outside. So, oh, and how many of you consider the dog park an important amenity to SaddleBrooke? Thank you. Just remember that, whoever gets elected. I'll be at your door.
Ron?
Ron Betschke, Unit 42, and I have a number of questions, but I'm happy to go to the end of the line. The first question is essentially directed to Peter Campbell, Jerry Shafer, and William Webster, none of whom I know. I'm concerned about the issue of transparency in our community. And the Arizona statutes direct certain things towards homeowners associations, one of which is that at all official meetings, that's board meetings and committee meetings, residents are entitled to address the meeting at the time an issue is discussed. The policy of our board of directors has been to not allow questions during discussion and only have questions unrecorded at the end of the meeting. So my first question is regarding the legal issue here. Will you support a change in policy so that residents can address the board as issues are discussed, and same thing in committees? My second part of this thing concerns letters. For the record, unlike Tuesday News, does not publish letters. Will you support a change in policy to allow letters to the editor in For the Record? Again, that's a transparency issue. And the last item I can call LUTs, and that is the Finance Committee has a budgeting process that is opaque. And as was just said here before, what happens is we have a budget meeting where everybody can address it. Nobody has a chance to really understand what that budget is. HOA 1 has an ongoing budget process, which is an open thing, an open meeting. Anybody can come down to any of their meetings and discuss issues, bring up things. Will you support a change in our budgeting process to be more open?
All right, I'll go first. I, like you, am very concerned about transparency. I think we need it. But I think we do have it in some of the areas that you've brought up. I mean, board meetings here do have open sessions which anybody can get up and ask questions.
Only after the meeting is over.
Well, it's during the meeting, though.
No, it's not. It's after the meeting is over, and Bill Einiger expressly tells you that at the beginning. Questions are for the question and answer session,
right,
which are not recorded while the rest of the meeting is.
All right. Well, I would support them being recorded. Now, my experience, and I can't speak for all of the different committees, but my experience in the Greens Committee, which I was a member of for several years, is that we always welcomed, and these are all advertised in the weekly email blasts. We always welcomed outside people coming in, regular members coming in and making presentations on different issues to the committee. In fact, they were always scheduled at the beginning of the meeting. They got first go. So in that particular case, that was always open. The invitation is always open, and I believe it is for the other committees. I forget the last part of your question. It was so long.
Letters to the editor.
Let me pass it along.
Who's next, Jerry? Yeah, Ron, I guess my opinion on that would be if state law says that we're supposed to allow the residents' voice during the meeting, then we have to adhere to that. I'm not quite sure on expediting the meeting and then having questions and answers after. You know, you're saying they're not recorded because it's after the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of residents have a lot of good information, a lot of experience. Maybe we should change that. If it's a state law, I would assume we'd have to change it.
Yeah, ARS 33-1804.
Okay.
Which is not the first time we brought this up.
I will say the committees that I've been involved with, as you well know, and the ALC, I believe it was your wife came in with great data on your designs on your gates and stuff like that, and we did an exception because you did your homework, you presented it the way you're supposed to, and it was approved. I'm open to that. I think the residents have a lot of good input. I think that for certain committees, though, to have an open meeting and have a ton of residents there with a lot of questions all during the meeting, it run excessive. And, you know, they're volunteers. They have things to do also. I think I'd have to take a look at the state law because I'm not aware of how it reads. But if it says that you're supposed to have question and answer periods during the meeting, I guess that's something we'd have to look at. I would be open to looking at it.
And the letters to the editor and for the record.
Okay, letters to the editor. I'm not sure the guidelines on for the record. I enjoy reading letters to the editor. I also I joined that Sabaz on the internet just to find out what the community is doing. Interesting thoughts, and you get a lot of good ideas from them. So letters to the editor, I have no opinion other than I think it's a good thing.
I agree. If it's state law, we follow it. One of the things that I've noticed is the board thinks it's transparent, but people don't. I have a problem, and the board likes to put out the information, but the people don't want to read it and absorb it and think about it. There's a big issue that we have. So I see them shaking their heads over there. They agree. So the thing is how do we change the way we send out the information? And I think people in this day and age read things in short bursts. They can't take a full page of written material and absorb it. So those are one of the things that we would look at. Now let's talk about the homeowners meetings that we have here. The board meeting has to run first because they've got to get some business done. Now I've listened to certain people go on and on and on with their questions, and I've seen the president try to tell them they only have so many minutes. And this is the issue I was saying before. There's just a few people that cause a problem for the rest of us. And so I have no problem with filming this or putting it online, but it needs to be edited for facts. So if someone goes on and on and on, we need to put the facts in there and cut it short, edit it. So if the state law provides for editing, that I would agree for. And so those are the problems that the board has faced. And I have no problems in communicating with people, with talking to people. I have no problems with letters to the editor. However, that for the record, I'm sure it costs us a lot of money. If you add another page, the cost goes up. So that's my position on it.
As far as the three issues, Ron, number one, the board meetings with the questions following the formal board meeting itself. The first time that happened, I was as surprised as anybody else. I believe the questions should be a part of the formal record. I don't know what the state law says. I can certainly look that up, but if the
I
state
can
law...
give it to you.
Okay. If the state law states that that's what we have to do, then we should be doing it.
It says, it says you're allowed to talk during the meeting. There should not be a separate question and answer session at the end.
Okay.
So if the general manager makes a report, a question or questions to the general manager should take place then.
Okay, I hear you. As far as letters to the editor, I believe for the record should carry letters to the editor. As president of the SDPO and the managing editor for letter is here today, we always accept letters to the editor, whether they're flattering to us as a board or as an organization or not. We need to have that kind of sane community feedback. As far as the budgeting process is concerned, you called it opaque. You can go to the finance committee meetings, attend those where the budgeting process is discussed. You can also come to the budget meeting as was held just last week. I would recommend, however, whenever there is a large meeting like last week's, that the handouts with the information be available as well, not just shown up on a screen or not just talked about. Again, it's all about transparency that I mentioned earlier.
I agree, transparency is a huge issue in the community. Reality and perception sometimes differ quite a bit. As far as the board meetings go, I think I'd have to look at that going ahead. I too kind of think it's hard for people to save questions for the end, but at the same time, you got to get through the meeting. So we'd have to kind of balance the two. For the record letters, I look at for the record as providing information. I don't know if it's the right forum for debate, but I think it's worth looking into. But I will address the budget meetings. Like I told you, I've been on the finance committee for 6 years. I don't think we've had a year gone by that people have been fully satisfied with the way the budget's been presented. I too agree that we need to be able to do it in a timely enough manner that information can be provided prior to the meeting. I also think the presentation itself should be structured in a way that it's visible and easy to understand. I think we have a lot of room for improvement on that.
Just one comment, and I know Ron disagrees with our interpretation of the rule as well as our chief counsel's interpretation of ARS that he's talking about. Basically, what the statute says is that if you have a motion on the floor, a motion for a specific area where the board has to vote, then the discussion must happen at that time with regard to the motion on the floor. And that process is followed. Ron's interpretation from our board's interpretation about the other discussion is more what most people are saying. We got to keep the board meeting moving. And when we have several people who continue to hold on to an issue, we get discontent among the other members in the audience, and people start leaving in disgust. And so that was one of the reasons that we altered the process to the way it is now.
I have read the law. I'm willing to look at it again. I understand both interpretations. I think it is kind of a loosely written piece of legislation, frankly. I have to respect that the current board has gotten legal opinion and they're following the legal opinion that they have been given. I do really believe that there should be discussion and open discussion, which there is, on things that are motions. Past boards I've been part of, staff reports are reports to the board, but are observed by the people in the audience. If that is something different according to the law, then I'm willing to look at that. Letters to the editor are great. Frankly, if we rethink our forums, maybe we need to do more with online discussion boards or things that directly feed into the board that provide more timely feedback both to the board and to the community than a printed document that comes out once a month actually provides us. So I think we need to look at other avenues. Part of the issue with the charges of a lack of transparency isn't because somebody isn't trying really, really hard. We simply need to look at new formats and new ways of getting at that. like the others, every committee meeting I've been to has been open, has been published, and has had opportunity for people to attend and to comment. So I'm having trouble with, I've never been, I'll go with this, I've never been in a forum, in a committee meeting, where either as a guest, someone observing, or as a member of the committee, where the SaddleBrooke community has not been.
Just as a matter of discussion for this thing, the entire transition committee and golf task force committee, not one meeting was open, not one meeting had an agenda published, not one meeting had minutes published. That's a clear violation. Now, I know you said that you signed some sort of agreement about secrecy, but that only involves the Robeson finances. It didn't involve the study of the different issues involved by the committee. So that's water under the dam. I understand that there's no way to go back and fix that. But we have had many meetings that
Ron, you've had your say for your first 2 minutes. What I'd ask you to do is please go to the end of the line, as you said you would, to ask another question.
Right.
Thank
I didn't
you.
ask a question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Susan Mason, Unit 43. I was really hoping someone else would bring this up so I wouldn't have to. But I do have a question about security. We have a community 4 miles up the road that has increased their guards at the gate, recognizing some security issues. HOA 1 has a card system, which I thought we were going to have, and I guess it's still planned at some point in time. We have had an increase in mail theft. Okay, you know, we're SaddleBrooke, we're still a wonderful place to live, and I think we're still pretty safe. We've had an increase in robberies in SaddleBrooke, and we just kind of watched the progression. And I'm curious what the candidates feel about looking at these issues and some increased security in SaddleBrooke too. As a former risk manager, I can tell you that if someone is attacked in one of our locker rooms, by the way, our locker rooms have absolutely no security at all. At the Preserve, you can walk in and out, no key, anything to go into the workout room. At DesertView, all you have to do is walk in through the ladies' locker room. You're right into the workout center. You're in the locker room, and no one is there, and there's no key required. And at Mountain View, all you have to do is go in. And I don't know what changes have been made, and maybe this is being corrected there. All you had to do was walk in the front, go in through the back, and you were right in the locker room and right in the pool. So I'm just curious what comments you might have on that. It's open to all of you.
We need the swipe system, bottom line. And we need to figure out the security on our back gates. I don't know the answer to that. I'm interested in talking to people about that because some of the units down there did have trouble this summer. And unfortunately, it's when people are gone. And we need to really re-examine what we're doing there. But we need the swipe system.
Concur with Diane's remarks.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I thought the swipe system was supposed to be in place for all of these facilities, and we need to move forward with that. As to sealing up the whole community, I think that's really difficult with the number of entrances that we have all around the place and the ways that you can get in here, you know, through the desert areas, which you know, back onto so much property here. But it's a serious issue we need to consider, and maybe think about ways to stepping up patrols and things like that.
I have heard these concerns expressed many times at board coffees and other forums. And at this point in time, I am very sensitive to that concern, and I would do whatever I can, find out what we can do to alleviate the situation.
I too believe that we need the swipe cards for the pools, for the fitness centers, etc. I've heard numerous times that people who live in Eagle Crest have been coming to the Preserve Fitness Center and using the facilities until they were chased out. So the swipe cards are necessary. I would also like to partner with the local sheriff's office to see what their recommendations would be. This community, even before we moved here in 2006, this community was talking about gating the community, but it's virtually impossible because one of the gates would have to be put on a county road. That is SaddleBrooke Boulevard. And previously, when the board went to the county, they said no. Not that they would say no again or yes, perhaps, but we can look into that. But if they said no again, then you wouldn't be able to gate this community fully. That's just the way it is. But I believe that partnering with the sheriff's office and coming to some conclusion based upon their evidence. I don't know your name, but you said that the rate of crime was increasing. I don't know that it's increasing or staying the same. A while back, when we had a rash of robberies, I'd say about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I did contact the county office up in Florence, and they gave me all the data. And then looking at the data, I did meet with Walter Yazzie, who is our operations manager. I believe the former, whose name I cannot remember, the former captain of the patrol, Vito was his name? Vito, okay, and we met with 2 officers. And they explained to us at that time that the percentage of crime in SaddleBrooke is far less than outside of SaddleBrooke. It might seem like it's a lot to us because we want 0 crime. But in any event, I think having those discussions with the local sheriff's office would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree totally with the swipe cards for our facilities. Unfortunately, crime is a societal problem everywhere. I think we have a sense of complacency here in SaddleBrooke because it's such a quiet, laid-back community. We don't think it'll happen here. Unfortunately, going to the sheriff and talking to him and trying to find out what happens on crime rate, it doesn't matter if it's one crime. If it happens to you, you got a crime problem. I mean, you come home, your house is robbed, you got problems. I think increased patrols is one method. We've already seen an increase in motion sensor lights. We've seen a lot of the combining the patrols. I think HOA 1 and HOA 2 are now combined with patrols. Is that true? Not yet? Okay. Anyway, I see the patrols moving around a lot more. Sometimes I think the patrols have a little more on their plate than they can handle with the number we have. I know vacation checks, at least according to the paper, seems to be their main thing. Maybe the board will have to take a look at that and see if we can come up with some additional security areas. But overall, I think it's a societal problem. I don't think we'll solve it completely. The main thing is we got to be personally responsible and a little safer in our life.
In a conversation with a resident, I mentioned that it could happen one day that SaddleBrooke would be gated. Okay, after they peeled themselves off the ceiling, all right, I couldn't convince them that the attitude of the residents could change. So looking at things that have happened in the world, if one of those bad things happened here, the attitude will change. And the thing is, it's security versus convenience. We can, and I've looked at it, gate this community down to probably 1 gate, but you won't like it, all right, because you'll have to go around about. You probably can't come down SaddleBrooke Boulevard to get to the mini mart and all these things. So the thing is, I don't see us gating it, all right, but I'm proactive, and I think we should have a plan and try again to get that SaddleBrooke Boulevard to us. And if there's a situation where we have serious crime here, I think the county could change their mind, because if we reroute traffic from SaddleBrooke Boulevard over to other roads, they won't be happy. But anyway, those are just thoughts. I'm not in favor of doing all that. I'm just telling you what we would have to do. Thank you.
We'll have a question from the other side.
I'm Diana Steinke, Unit 31. I'm wondering, I kind of think of a board position as a full-time volunteer position. So I'm wondering, this would be for everybody. Who is, if anyone, a partial snowbird? And who, if anyone, has outside employment type interests or businesses even here that would take a good portion of their time either off the campus or away from the potential to serve on a relatively full-time basis as a board member?
I'll start with that. First of all, my wife and I are full-time residents here. You know, we do vacation, we do go back east to visit the kids and grandkids, but we're here 90% of the year. As far as employment, full disclosure, I have been working as a per diem employee for 10 years with an educational firm. However, unlike when we were all full-time employees, when I get contacted to see if I can go somewhere and provide a service for a school, I always have the option of saying no. And I can tell you that in the 6 years that I've been on the STPO board, never once has that job interfered with me attending the meetings, because I know when the meetings are and I schedule my employment hours around that time. Board meetings are scheduled, board coffees are scheduled, committee meetings are scheduled. So I know when those meetings are going to occur, and I can certainly work around that.
I'm a full-time resident. I really don't like the winters here. I like to go to Hawaii, but I can't afford it. All right. I'm not employed by anyone, and I know that if I'm elected to the board, that's a full-time commitment. So instead of playing golf today, I'm right here telling you that what I'm going to do, and I won't get to play as much golf. I'll probably still support the golf courses as an annual. And as Bob said, you work around the meetings and so forth. I've been very active in my church, but I have, in recent times, I'm getting rid of or releasing some of those duties, getting other people to do those things. So for me, the full-time job will be on the board.
I also am a full-time resident with my wife, Lori. The only time I can see I'd be away is when she tells me we're going somewhere. I don't envision having a lot of free time on the board. I see the current board members, and I'm amazed that they even have a personal life. I see them running around. Just this last week, because I'm a candidate, I've been going to a lot of the meetings, and I'm telling you, we are lucky. We have volunteers that put in the time they do. It's amazing to me. I think all of us are going to have to take a look at our time constraints. I love to golf. I obviously won't get to golf as much. My handicap won't hurt. But the board meetings and the committee meetings are something the board is responsible for, and I will be there for them.
I'm a full-time resident, and I too want to say that the board and the hours they put in the past has been very, very large amount. I would hope not to work that many hours, and I would hope with 5 of us on the board there'll be a little more division of responsibilities. But I'm prepared to do what it takes.
Yeah, I'm a year-round resident here, and I fully retired quite a number of years ago, so I have no other outside commitments or anything. And having had both my knees replaced over the last 6 months, I know I can live with a little less golf in my life.
I am a full-time resident, and I've been on the board for 4 years. First of all, I'd like to say that a board position should not be a full-time position. That being said, yes, it has been for the last several years as we've been trying to put this community ready for transition. One of the reasons I'm running for the board again is because I feel like we're finally at that point where the board can function as a board should function, which means setting policy, strategic direction, and then having time to enjoy our lives in retirement. With regard to full disclosure, I have 2 business partners, and we are currently opening an art gallery. And so there is a commitment there for me. However, it is very close. The hours are minimal, and I've already committed to them that my hours will be on the weekends so that it doesn't interfere with board work. Oh, and just as Mike mentioned, while we quote have 5 board members right now, really only 3 of them are active with regard to this community.
I'm a full-time resident. This is our only home. I'm completely retired, thank goodness. But I agree with the other comments. With 5 board members, one of the things we have to do is reshape this board to be the kind of board we really need.
Alan?
Good morning. This is directed first to Therese. This deals with Arizona Statute 33-1805, which basically states that any member or resident or whoever they designate shall have, upon request, just about all documents within the HOA available for their review within 10 business days. The reason I ask that is that on an occasion within the last few years, I asked to review specific documents related to the food and beverage operation. Not only wasn't I given those documents, it was 3 or 4 months that it took. I was delayed, and when I finally got some documents, it was nothing but a facade in that it was just documents that were made up. Now, it's interesting to note that in June of this year, I asked for those documents again through Damon, and they were honest this time and told me that those documents didn't exist and they had not existed. So my question is, do I have a commitment from you and other board members that you will adhere to the provisions in the statute that I mentioned? And while there was a question with respect to the statute that Ron mentioned as far as whether you interpreted or your lawyer interpreted the way he did, this one is black and white. It says that if I am a member of the association, I have the right to review said documents within 10 days. Question is, will you adhere to the provisions of that statute?
Yes, I will, and we try as hard as we can to do that. My understanding with some of what I know what you wanted in the past, some of it didn't exist, some of it did exist, but where we were asking, and shame on us, what we were asking you to do was sit down to with the people who had prepared them so they could walk you through the process. But you're right, you should have what you need.
And the other thing is that to follow up on what Ron said with respect to the budget process, of all the responses that I listened to with that, I was very comfortable with Mike Collins' response. Specifically, in 2016, when we had the budget review, there were handouts. And at that time, questions were posed that, could we look at the process that HOA 1 uses for the budget, which is much more open, okay, much more detailed. And we were told, yes, it would be looked at, and it would be reported back to us what was decided. Well, this year we come to the budget process. There are no handouts this year. There's a presentation that lasted about 57 minutes. I'm very good with numbers, and I'm sure a lot of other people are. It was extremely difficult, if not impossible, to follow everything. Now, if I understand, we had that one budget meeting, and now the board is going to meet with the finance committee, or the finance committee is going to make a recommendation, and then the board will rubber stamp it and it'll go through. I don't think, candidly, that is a transparent budget process. So what I'm asking, is it possible this time to look at how HOA 1 does their budget and maybe make some adjustments as we go forward? Thank you.
Norma West from Unit 33, and this question is for Bill Webster. SaddleBrooke is full of rumors, and you have listed on your resume involvement with the SaddleBrooke Softball Association, and a rumor has it that your involvement with them ended very badly as a result of some dispute over team alignment, etc. And as a result of that, you dismantled, because you built it, the SaddleBrooke softball website, which created quite a bit of chaos in the softball community. If this is a true rumor, shouldn't we be concerned about your compatibility in working on this board?
Okay, you guys, here's the dirt. All right, I was asked to manage a team. I'd managed teams in the past. I'd won a lot. People didn't like that. The reason I was able to win a lot was because I just understood people, where they should play and so forth. I was asked to manage a team in the recreational league. This is a team where you instruct people. I was working with 5 of the people, all right, on how to play softball. All right? I explained to people their arms weren't that good. They had to run towards first and throw the ball and so forth. We had a person who was not in charge of that particular team, that league, and they had a wife on the other team. When it came time to select the teams, I got to choose second. That was okay. Then, when the other team lost a player, I had to give up one of my players. They wanted me to give up my first round choice. Well, that was my shortstop, and every team needs a shortstop. So I said, you can have this player, which was pretty good. It was bigger than me and hit the ball further and had a pretty good arm. I didn't care. All right, then it went on that they decided they were going to move another player later in the league because we had won too many games. Well, we were just 1 game ahead. Now, the problem was that the other manager's team had stopped playing. And when you stop playing, then that's the situation. I just caught, and if you play softball, catching is, all right, the least desired position because that's what you do. People on my team wanted me to go out in the field because we'd have a stronger team. I said, no, we developed the team. Now, I argued with these people, the person who really wasn't in charge, but I didn't know that, and I came to a resolution. All right, I found a good player, one of the best players to go on the other team. We had that settled. Then I get a call saying, no, we can't do that because the other manager doesn't like that. At that point, I said, okay, I will quit. And then when I quit, I said, because you have destroyed my intellectual property, remember I was a college professor, this was my class. I'm going to take my intellectual property that I have done for the website, which meant the website would go back to exactly the way it was. Now, the fact that they didn't have someone who wanted to sit in and type in the new stuff was not my fault. And as my wife said, you took your toys and you went home with them. Well, she was right, all right? But it was very frustrating. And so some of it is correct, some of it is not correct. There's the whole story from my viewpoint. And if you have something else you want to say, go ahead.
But you did take the website down.
I did not take the website down. You have to understand, all right, when I took the website over, it was done by hand. So every game was put in by hand. I set up a database so that people put into the database, and then it did all the calculations and put it out. All that happened when I took my stuff off was they had to go back to doing it by hand. The website was there, it ran, there was nothing wrong with it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll have 2 more questions, one right over here.
Okay. This is for each of you. Do you think pickleball should become an amenity? And should HOA2 support expanding pickleball since there are over 700 members?
Me? Oh, okay. I support pickleball. The thing that I worry about, is it a fad? All right, and so if we build pickleball facilities, will they end up not being used in, say, 5 years? I support building an indoor facility, an athletic facility, which maybe initially may be pickleball, but later could be turned into basketball courts, could be indoor softball, which some people don't know can be played indoor, but when I was in Michigan, that's what they had, all right? You can also have an indoor golf driving range and so forth. So yes, I support pickleball. And I want to see it be developed. I would hope that we can go with homeowners one and merge our resources and build an indoor facility. If that happens, great. If not, let's put up the pickleball courts where it was proposed, and that's fine with me too.
Obviously, I'm in favor of pickleball if I want to eat tonight. No, I think pickleball is a great sport. Coming from Florida, I went down to the villages and they have huge tournaments down there. I think pickleball is here to stay. I don't think it's a fad at all. I think it's going to be like tennis. I think as we mature and get into that, pickleball is a sport. I know there's a lot of controversy about the new ball and the old ball, where they can play. The preserve had some problems with the noise. I think an indoor court might be the answer to that, but the cost is prohibitive right now. But I think the management has worked out something with the transition with these new courts. So that'll give us a few more courts. We got to compete with the ranch, and they got 26 courts out there now and quite a facility. So we need to take a look at that. I'm definitely for encouraging and expanding our pickleball facilities.
Yes, I too support pickleball and the Pickleball Association. And during the talks that we held to purchase the golf courses, we made sure that we procured land. Actually, the land where the courts currently sit still belongs to RCI. That will be deeded over to us. And then adjacent land will be deeded over to us. So we can put on, I believe, 8 more pickleball courts down there. So yes, I fully support pickleball. And I too do not believe it's a fad. It's going to be here for a long, long time.
I play pickleball. I enjoy it very much. And I think Bob's last comment, it's not a fad. If you look at new active adult communities, pickleball is an amenity, just like tennis, whatever else that we had before. If you look at Robeson, what he's doing at SaddleBrooke Ranch, he's got pickleball courts, he's got a dog park, he's got a softball field, he's got all these things that we had to put in on the burden on the back of our community. People had to support that themselves. And when I talk about getting a dialogue going between us and HOA 1, part of the problem is if there's going to be support for these common activities, amenities, it's got to be shared between both the associations because they are SaddleBrooke amenities.
Yeah, I think pickleball is here to stay. I don't play it, but I can see that it's growing, it's very popular, and clearly it is an amenity. As to what we do going forward, it's great. We're getting some new land to put in some new courts. Let's get those built, see how the thing works out, and then in years to come, let's see what else we need to do.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, when I was giving my talk, I said one of the most important things that this board needs to do is to review all of its existing policies that were put in place more than 10 years ago. One of those policies has to do with, quote, new amenities. And at the time that board existed, they made the distinction that if you had amenities that were existing, like when you signed your documents and it said, RCI will provide you this many pools in the theater and this and that, they said those were amenities to be supported. They said that any other amenities needed to be self-supporting. Once again, that is saying that pickleball needs to be self-supporting, softball needs to be self-supporting, and dog park needs to be self-supporting, horseshoes needs to be self-supporting, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I'm saying, no, we really need to look at this. And there are ramifications though, and everybody needs to be aware of that, is that if we as the board or as the association takes on more of these responsibilities, it's going to cost more. Just everybody needs to remember that when we talk about doing that. That being said, I think these are important amenities. Secondly, I know there are over 700 pickleball members, and at least a third of them, from my understanding, are part of HOA 1. With regard to how do you get everybody, both associations, to help cough for this, there are legal ramifications associated with that make it a little difficult. From my own perspective, there are ways to do it, and I think it's just a matter of getting a couple attorneys together to develop a separate entity upon which both, now I'm saying attorneys need to do this because this is what I'm dreaming, but how it can legally happen, I'm not sure, but basically talk about a joint ownership on specific land upon which both have responsibilities for it. Because the other issue is that if we, HOA 2, support it, once again, we bear at this point all the costs associated with it. The third issue is, for example, when we were able to get RCI to give us the additional land via the golf course agreement, we were looking towards HOA 1 to cough up some of their existing land for additional parking, which is needed if you're going to increase the number of courts that you're going to have. They've declined to do that. So the Transition Negotiating Committee worked with our developer to procure additional spaces via rental, and you'll see this in the transition agreement. But basically what we said was, give us some of your recreational vehicle spaces that you currently rent to other people, and let us carve it out. Once again, this is your HOA that's doing this to try and help the situation.
Yes, I support pickleball. I was a member of that transition negotiating team that first of all asked for the pickleball land as part of the golf course agreement, which you voted on and accepted, so we have that land. Second, going back with the transition negotiating team with RCI to work, as Therese said, to get that parking when HOA 1 declined. We still have to work with HOA 1 in the long term. That is a 5-year agreement for the parking land. We still need to make that happen. We need to work with HOA 1 on all of the amenities, as already has been described. But here's the deal. If you look at the strategic plan, it recommends that all of those clubs that are now responsible for certain lands, that we figure out the process of making those amenities and making those amenities that are part of our larger strategic and financial plan, and figuring out what is the best way to work with all of those clubs to make this a good deal for all of SaddleBrooke. And so we have some major restructuring to do. And I examined, as part of the strategic plan, every club we have in SaddleBrooke. We have some major replanning, restructuring to do in that relationship between the HOA and every one of its clubs to figure out how to make those good leverage both for our association as we market our community, but also the best of services for all of our residents.
Mark, you get the last question.
Thank you very much. Mark Weissel, Unit 42. The discussion that has just taken place probably answered some of my question. It had to do with, after transition, I assume that HOA 2 will combine some services, et cetera, amenities with HOA 1. And I also assume that after transition, since we both now will have been transitioned, we will simply be, I hope, talked about in the community on television and advertising and so forth as SaddleBrooke, without the HOA 1, HOA 2 references. But what the last speakers just spoke about, it sounds like whoever gets on the board will have a big job in negotiating, restyling HOA 1 and 2 to now become it just becomes SaddleBrooke. And I think it's a great idea for advertisement purposes, et cetera, et cetera.
I was once told by one of the Robeson executives that the one thing they really regret was ever building up this community as 2 HOAs. It's caused way more problems, you know. But so I guess we have some work cut out.
Let's have a nice round of applause for our candidates. And remember to vote early and often, as we say on the East Coast. Thank you all for coming.